G'day Trixie, just a quick note to you to help you with your dough balls to get a nice puffy crust. So I have a little business on the side, making pizzas for my cafe, and I tend to use a Canotto style. So I use 67% hydration, and I use a poolish. So the way to make the poolish is I take 20% of my flour, 20%, and then the same volume of water and all of the yeast in the calculation. So if we're going to run 4 dough balls at 250 grams, we're going to need to, the day before, make a batter from that 20%. So in this case, I'm making 4 dough balls of 250 grams, which means my total flour is going to be 588 grams. My total water is going to be 394 grams. My salt is 18 grams, and my yeast is 0.5 grams. The poolish to make that is 117 grams of flour, 117 grams of water, and all of that yeast, so that 0.5 grams. So I make a batter out of that. So I put the water in a tallish type container, Tupperware container, and then I put the flour in, put the yeast in, and I give that a bit of a mix. Then I'll put the flour in, and I will, just using a spatula, just mash that together until there are no dry spots, and just mix and mix and mix until it's a batter. You don't need to use a mixer. It's just a rough mix. You let it sit. I let it sit on the bench until it's doubled in size, and then I'll seal it and put it in the fridge overnight. The following day, I will then make my dough in a stand mixer. So I've got a 5 kilo stand mixer, spiral mixer at work, which is what I use, but you can use whichever mixer you want. So the main doses you're going to need is 471 grams of flour, 277 grams of water, 18 grams of salt, and the poolish you made yesterday. So pull the poolish out probably an hour or two before you want to use it, and then just let it sit on the bench. So once it's come up to speed, pour all of your water into your stand mixer and get it started. Whilst it's doing its thing, if you're using just a normal stand mixer like a Kenwood or a Magic Aid or whatever the American one is, you can just start pouring your poolish in, because it should be a liquid, because it's 100% hydration in the poolish, and it should have risen and it should have done some fun things. You allow that to break in. This is the way that I do it. You allow it to break in. You can squeeze it in if you want to, and make it so that it, as Vito says, melts into the water. Following that, once that's been going for a couple of minutes and it's started to mix in and the water's gone cloudy, you then start putting your flour in, just one scoop at a time. Let it mix in a bit. And then once it's mixed in and it's starting to form, that's when I put my salt in. So you let that knead and mix until it's starting to come away from the sides. What I do then is I'll turn the mixer off, and I will cover it with either plastic container lids or plastic film. I'll take the hook out and plastic film it, and let it sit there for 20 minutes, half an hour. You're just letting the flour to hydrate from the water. After that, I will then let it knead for a little while longer. And I use a temperature gun and let it get up to 22 degrees Celsius. By the way, I'm Australian and using Celsius and metric. So following that, tip it onto a bench. I will then give it a shape and turn it into a great big dough ball. In this case, not too big a dough ball, at 1 kilo. and I'll then put it into a container and let it proof at room temperature for 18 hours. 6 hours before cook time, I then pull it out. I then tip it back onto the bench, and I will then divide it into 4 because that's how many dough balls we're making in this instance. Usually I'll scale them because it's for my business, and I will have them in dough balls in containers ready to go for 6 hours from that time. So if I'm doing a 6 o'clock cook, it'll be 4 to 6 hours prior to cooking that I'll actually make my dough balls. After that, they'll be nice and soft, ready to go, and hopefully, if it all works out the way that it works out for me every single time, you'll get nice Canotto style pizza crusts. No worries. Cheers.